Project Clay, that they're trying to drive all of us white people out of this country. They're just opening the borders, and these Mexicans here, they will move into an apartment complex, and the managers will be really hard on the white people that are living in the apartments, and they'll let the Mexicans get away with anything. They won't even have contracts or anything to live in these apartments.
1 minute until showtime.
Anyway.
Okay, we got 1 minute till showtime. And you'll hear my music. After that, we're recording and rolling. Yeah, that's well, they did the same thing in the Soviet Union, and that's exactly what we're pushing the Bolshevik Revolution. The Jews ran all of their kinfolk, all the Jews, in from the Pale settlement into the you know, the rest of the Russia, and ended up murdering 60 million white Russians. And I personally believe they've killed more Americans in this country than they did in Russia in the last 100 years. If you take all the medications and the genetically modified food, and this is what I was going to talk about on the heart
Your
attack.
show will go live
There we
in
go.
5 seconds. 4,
Let me put on my
2,
professional face.
2, 1. Rock Talk Radio.
Now we can see a new world coming into view. A world in which there is a very real prospect of a new world order.
The New World Order does not mean surrendering our national sovereignty or forfeiting our interests.
He took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States of America. By some, he's been called controversial.
How can I convince you when your ears refuse to hear? You turn your heart away from me each time when I draw near. Your eyes refuse to meet with mine, they glance away in fear. Now, keep in mind that some of my guests have been approached by Homeland Security or FBI saying, why are you going on the Clay Douglas show?
My message to those guys, if they're listening this morning, is go get a cup of coffee. Maybe you'll learn something.
We both took the same vow, to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I don't recall there being an expiration date on that. Well, it's just a show. Blinded by the light.
He is the free American, Clay Douglas. Catch the Free American weekdays at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern.
Every time I think about the damage that's been done, the anger wells inside me till I'm almost overcome. I want to down the moon down with the sky and rock the sun.
For the podcast and more details, visit www.freeamerican.com or catch the podcast by phone by calling 832-999-8621.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American. I am your host. I'm Clay Douglas. My guest today is Fritz Springmeier, author of Bloodlines of the Illuminati. Hello, Fritz. How are you?
Well, I'm doing fine this morning, Clay. Glad that I could be on your show. Thanks for inviting me, and thanks for your patience in trying to get me on.
Well, I appreciate you getting up that early out there in the Pacific realm. And beautiful country that you're in. Been up there many times.
Yes, it is. You know, we live in a beautiful country. It's sad to see how they're destroying it. You know, the Constitution's fallen onto hard times. Free Americans like yourself are slated for extinction. It's sad what we see happening around us. This could be such a beautiful country. It could be so prosperous. And here in Oregon, as you know, during the time that you and I have been associated with each other for the last 20 or 25 years, why, you know, they've shut down our industry and they've just ruined the economy. At least in Texas, you've got a vibrant economy going.
Well, they may be trying to shut that down. We've got Jade Helm here. And it's Jade Helm is probably worse than you even know.
Well, I've been writing some articles on it. You know, my last article talked about the wording. A lot of people don't know that there's something called human domain analytics, and just the very word human domain, for the intelligence people, the intelligence community, it has a specific meaning. There's human domain data, and they tag you by these certain things like the who, what, and context that you live in. You know, just trying to keep this real brief for people. But what they're stirring the pot with this whole thing. So when they come out and they move through your community, believe me, the intelligence agencies are watching everybody's reaction, and across the board, digitally, they're getting a concept of how you're going to react, so that they're able to do with the computers. They're able to grab in totally everything that's happening with everybody. It's neutral as to the data that they collect. They just want to scoop in everything, and then their algorithms are able to tell them ahead of time what people are going to do. It's predictive programming.
Yes.
They do the same now with their police, where they use intelligence to tell the police where the crimes. It's called intelligence-led policing, which ignores civil rights, by the way. But then what's the importance of civil rights? We got to control the population, you know. And that's the thinking.
Now, I've also told people, Fritz, that this is a conditioning. You talk about predictive programming, that's certainly true, but it's also to get you used, as the American citizen, used to seeing those tanks in the street, used to seeing the paramilitary in your streets, and it's you know, in fact, we don't want to go. I'm certainly not suggesting, and you know, they do hold me responsible for starting the militia, but that doesn't mean that we go out and attack these troops in the streets. These boys in the street don't know what's going on. Well, a handful of them do and are starting to wake up, but they're just following orders. They're just following orders. So we don't want to go out and shoot our own children, our own brothers, our own sisters, our own sons and daughters. We don't want to do that. But they are trying to set us up to do that.
Well, to further go along with that thought, but come in from a different angle, as a historian and also a military historian and somebody who was in the Army, one of the things that if you go and look at D-Day, and the planning for D-Day was incredible. It was a book-sized thing, but the enormous amount of details. But one of the things that they wanted to do is they wanted to desensitize the German military to what was going to happen on D-Day. So they would fly groups of, like 1,000 bombers at targets, so that the Germans would be desensitized when they actually carried out D-Day. So when the American bombers on D-Day flew up against the Normandy area, the Germans weren't alerted that there was something unusual going on, because they had been, like you say, conditioned to accept this. So, there's a red list, as a lot of your viewers or listeners know, and that red list are people that are going to be taken out very early on by surprise raids. And this Jade Helm 15 is definitely either practicing, or some people even think that they're actually going to do the red list. But at any rate, it is desensitizing us to the carrying out of seizing the people on the red list. But when they seize people on the red list, Clay, it's going to be at night. So they can't change the time that they need to do it, but they definitely need to goober up and obfuscate a lot of other details about when the people on the red list are going to be seized.
Well, I've known that I'm on the red list. That's one of the reasons I haven't set foot on a plane since I was in the presidential race with Charles Collins back in '96. I haven't set foot on a plane since, because I'm not taking my boots off for no foreigners and TSA. But I've known that I was on the red list for quite some time.
Well,
and you too, probably. I mean, that's
I don't know if I ever. Part of being on the red list is not necessarily your politics, but just how they view you in terms of leadership. There's some of the veterans that probably don't get out and do as much as you and I, as far as talking about all this, but just the fact that they're very skilled, highly skilled in weapons and so forth, in these people's eyes, makes them a threat. So there's some people that may be thinking that they're lower key as far as these three lists, and they may be surprised because they just don't want anybody who's a potential leader, that could potentially be skilled at confronting them.
Well, I used to wonder why the ADL and Southern Poverty Law were so adamant about trying to demonize me. I'm just an old biker from Texas. What the hell is wrong with you people? Why would I be demonized? What part of the Second Amendment don't you understand? But I think you're right. I think it's the potential of me being a leader. I formed the militias in New Mexico, and I did it in the governor's office. That was Governor Gary Johnson, who should have been our president last instead of Barack Obama. We would have had a lot better country.
Yeah, definitely. It's that leadership potential that they see in you it's going to catch their attention. And we've lost this country, as you and I both realize. We live in a police state now, and the people are talking about the Constitution. They don't realize that to the people that are making decisions, that's toilet paper to them.
That's just a goddamn piece of paper, said your president. And I've also referred to the whole fact that the Republicans and Democrats are two wings of the same bird, and there ain't a dime's worth of difference between them. You know, and that bird, by the way, is a global vulture, folks. It ain't an eagle.
Yeah, or as I once said, you know, there's not a dime's bit of difference, and then the guy I was talking to said, well, there is a dime worth of difference, and that's about it. It's maybe a dime's worth of difference between the Republicans and Democrats. Not enough to make a difference. Just enough to fool the people that aren't awake. So I'm sure you came up with some topics you wanted to talk about. Where did you want to go with?
Well, with this police state, I wanted you got put in jail for what? I mean, basically writing a book, Bloodlines of the Illuminati, and that book's still for sale and still available. Now, I talk a lot about the Jewish connection here. I talk about the Jewish connection, and it really is relevant, but I haven't noticed that you said much about it. But it is worse than anybody has any idea here, because it's Sheldon Adelson and others are getting upset about the boycott of Israel, and they're threatening any groups. This is they're threatening to get any groups that are trying to boycott Israel. And we know that I have had Israeli IDF soldiers come on my show and say that the United States is the next Palestinians. The American people are the next Palestinians. Here, let me play a quick clip here. And this Sheldon Adelson is your president maker. He's the one that took over for Meyer Lansky and took over the gambling in Las Vegas.
American tycoons pledged to fight back against those who are inclined to boycott Israel. The campaign of threats follow a decision by French telecom giant Orange to withdraw from Israel. Media mogul Hayim Saban threatened the French Telecommunications Corporation with a robust response. He said Israeli lobbies will create a climate that forces any business group considering boycotting Israel to revise its strategy. Saban was speaking in a joint Israeli television interview with the Jewish-American billionaire Sheldon Adelson. For his part, Adelson said anti-Israel organizations are making a lot of headway on the campuses in the US. He stressed that such organizations in the global campaign of boycott, divestment and sanctions will be the first targets that will meet Israeli punishment. The threats come as the world is witnessing a rising trend of boycotting Israel over Tel Aviv's rights violations and illegal settlement activities in the Palestinian territories.
Now, what do you think about that? I mean, this is Americans threatening foreign countries to control their news feed, and I have mentioned many times on this show that it is the Jewish community that controls Hollywood and our news station. Their companies have been set up to do that. Where do they fit into the whole Illuminati of your research? Your book, you talk about the presidents being related, 20 or so of our presidents being related somehow, and you know, it's the players. We've got England, the city of London, which I would assume that the offices of the Bar Association, the British Accredited Registry of Lawyers, has offices right next door to the World Bank's controlled by the Rothschilds. Where does all this fit in your research?
Okay, you just want to get to the deep heart of it all. Well, what I try to get people away from is putting labels on the evil hierarchy that controls us. And the reason why is because, one, they use trauma-based mind control on their children, and what that does is it creates a multiple personality that they control. And so these people will have a front personality that seems to be a really great community leader, a great banker, or whatnot, and they have other sides to them. So what you see in the front is not what you really get in total. So somebody might be a very good Jewish believer. You know, he goes to a synagogue and he talks about how you know, he loves doing good, but he might have a satanic side to him. And that's what we're dealing with, is ultimately, because you know, during the 90s, I was working with bringing people out of the Illuminati and dealing with their mind control. The thing is they could be a Christian, they could be a Jew, but ultimately, when you get to understand their hidden side of them, they're just a bunch of Satanists. And Christ referred to these people. You see, the Word of God said people that are Jews but aren't Jews. You know, so ultimately, all these front labels fall apart. And so if you go in and say, okay, well, there's all these Jewish bankers, there's all these people, Jews that are running Hollywood and everything, it sounds like the religion of Judaism is controlling all of this, but ultimately it's far worse than that. These people are in the mother of secret societies, the Illuminati, and at the core of it, they're not practicing the Old Testament or whatnot. They're at the core of it. These people are totally sold out to the dark side. So I try to get people away from just looking at labels. I recently wrote an article about the Zohar, and the Zohar, which is the core of what the Kabbalah is, it's important to occultists, Gnostics, Freemasons. If you look at the leading authorities of Freemasonry, they say that the Kabbalah and the Zohar are the foundation of what Freemasonry is about. Well, the Zohar is very important to the Jews, and if you think back, and a lot of people that are in the awake community weren't awake back in 1991, like you and I were, and they probably missed that Congress in 1991 passed the Noahide laws. Remember that, Clay?
Yes, sir, I do.
Yeah, and so some people, you know, back then were looking at, well, what are these Noahide laws? And the Noahide laws prescribed the guillotine for offenders, you know, and that made the Christians think of Revelations 24, which talks about Christian martyrs in end times being beheaded, you know. So they're like, whoa, we don't want these Noahide laws passed. But anyway, for instance, when I was in federal prison, I had both the Christian chaplain and the Jewish chaplain come by my cell at the same time. They looked in the window together, and they were both suggesting that I follow the 7 Noahide laws. Well, at any rate, here they're going to have to come up with a world religion for everybody. And when you look at Freemasonry and what their goals are in line with the Zohar, you know. They want to rebuild the Temple of Solomon, but the Zohar says that the Temple of Solomon wasn't built according to true plans. So Freemasonry, one of its goals is to rebuild the Temple of Solomon, but to redo it right according to the Zohar. So there's this when you start looking at the plans of these people and who they are, there's definite connection with what you're talking about. And it's interesting that Southern Poverty Law Center hates me just as much as they hate you. I get on their hate list too. that told the FBI I was a terrorist. I'm no terrorist. I'm just somebody who believes in God, loves this country, and wants to support the Constitution and freedom. Christ was about freedom. He said that I came to set you free. He said that I came to give you life and life more abundantly. So he wasn't just talking about heaven, but he wants us to have life abundant here while we're living here too. In fact, what we pray is
I think we're in heaven or hell. We can take your pick. Depends on your mindset.
Yeah, exactly.
Jesus also told us, you can do what I do and more. And he warned us about the Jews who say they're Jews but are not, or of the synagogue of Satan. So what we've got here, I've referred to people that say, well, I'm a Judeo-Christian. Well, you might as well say you're a satanic Christian, because the Satanists, which is the oldest religion on earth, has pretty much had taken over both the Catholic Church. I mean, look at the child molestations. And the Jews are guilty of that. We just did something about circumcision and watched rabbis cutting the foreskin off of babies, and then doing their little vampiric ritual of sucking the blood from the baby's penis. My God, I mean, what is that? I mean, this is to me, this is nothing but Satanism, flat out. Whatever name you put on it. What about it? What do you think?
Well, I think we have to get beyond labels, because labels sometimes fail us, and just realize that we have some very dark, evil people that are making the decisions and have this agenda to take us into. They already control things, but it's not right out in the open, and the level of control that they're going to bring, they're going to keep moving us on their agenda. And part of what they're going to do is just overwhelm us. If people are beginning to feel overwhelmed, well, you should, because that's their goal, is to just totally, create so many crises that people just are overwhelmed. And what's going to happen when people get overwhelmed? Well, at a certain point, they're going to see Ebola, ISIS, all these huge problems, and they're going to go, we can't deal with this. We need to let our socialist government take care of us. And unfortunately, that's the wrong solution. We need to take responsibility for ourselves. And that's something, I come from farm people. My dad's folks, my mom's people, they were Kansas farmers. Very intelligent, self-reliant, responsible people. And I look up to my heritage and the people that I came from. And that's what America needs to be about, taking responsibility for ourselves, working hard, and not sucking on this government teat that's, going to get. Half of the people are, we've got 40 million people that are getting food stamps. I go through, we're actually in a situation that's worse than the Great Depression. We just don't see it because so many people are getting food stamps. But at some point in time, half of the children in this country will be on food stamps.
It is certainly getting that way, and I think one of the reasons they came after me, Fritz, was right before my accident. I was turning my 5 acres out in New Mexico into a Liberty Village. I was suggesting that we put up low-cost structures like teepees, which I think are probably the optimum, and if we put our own power on it, solar around the top of it, fire inside it, and if we grew our own food and had our own power, we didn't need the government or the banks for nothing. And I think that really upset them, and since then they've tried to make it illegal to go off the grid. They've come in and taken over people's homes. And I told people, you know, well, Clay, I can't do Liberty Villages. I got jobs in the city. Well, then turn your block. Go out and talk to your neighbors and turn the block into a village.
Right.
It was a farm before they built that house on it. Grow food, not grass, and you got that roof there that could be bringing you in money from the sun. We've had windmills across this country, and I'm out in West Texas now. You know where I'm at. You spend some time out here. You look out your prison cell window, and what do you see? Row upon row of windmills. We don't need the gasoline companies. We could do electric. I keep thinking of when I was a kid, I had a bicycle, and I think I bought from one of my comic books a little generator that clapped onto my front forks, and it had a little wheel that rubbed up against my bicycle wheel, and I had a headlight.
Yeah.
So we've really had the technology, especially with Tesla and other people, like the gentleman I just had on my show a few days ago, Paul Pantone, who invented the Geet carburetor. We've got the and with the electric and magnetic generators, we've really had the technology. We've had to be totally independent for years.
Yep. They have suppressed this technology. They have killed inventors. They've hijacked their inventions, and on and on. They have done a incredible job of keeping this self-reliant technology away from the American people. Even stuff that we used to have. When I grew up, my people would have windmills, and then windmills became unpopular. You can still see when you drive through Kansas, like western Kansas, you'll see some windmills, but if you look close, they're not being used. They're just standing there as like a monument to what we used to do. And so there's so much that we could be doing, and yet the trend is to become more dependent on big government, more dependent on their corporations. You know, even our seeds are being made by Monsanto and so forth. And there's a few people that are actually getting the heirloom real seeds, but we need more of that. We need more self-reliance.
Self-reliance is exactly what I've been preaching for 20 years, and that I really believe, even beyond the fact that in March of 2004 I referred to 9/11 as an exaggerated case of Jewish lightning. That could have been a tactical error, because in April they tried to kill me, or May they tried to kill me. So but also I was promoting the whole concept of Liberty Village, and you can do it, telling people you can do it in your backyard. You don't need a farm, you don't need a ranch. You got all of that space on your roof. All you need is put solar panels up there, and that house will pay your bills and income from now on. From now on. We really got, you know, I really see a bright future. If you watch videos of what's going on in Germany, their farms and ranches all have solar on them.
Right.
And that may not even be the best. I mean, I think a magnetic generator in your garage or your back porch would do the same thing. I'm still impressed with a video I saw of a squirrel cage. Somebody had built a squirrel cage looked kind of like a bicycle wheel, an inverted bicycle wheel, and they put a permanent magnet on the outside of the wheel and a steel ball inside the wheel. Then it was on a free-flowing axle, and that wheel just turned forever. Talk about perpetual motion. That's why you can't get a patent on a perpetual motion machine, because the powers that be are scared to death of it, and they've made it a violation of national security for you to build one. I have people that built, you know, like things like a Pogue carburetor, or one of my former father-in-laws built a Pogue carburetor, and two guys in black suits showed up. Hi, Mr. Babcock, we got to ask you to, you got to destroy that carburetor you got on the truck that's getting 60 miles a gallon. Yeah, what if I don't? We'll kill you. He said, I believed him.
Yeah.
And take that one off your building for your neighbor there, Colonel Conrad. This is how much they watch you. And that would lead right back to the AI programs. If they found a village that was becoming self-sufficient, on their way to becoming self-sufficient, Jade Helm would be camped out on their back 40, in my opinion.
Well, I agree with you that they're terrified of us taking care of ourselves, and I totally agree with you on that. There are other things that are, you know, I have a friend, Drew Lamb, and he has a rotation system where he gets food garbage for free from the restaurants. Then he has black soldier flies and red worms that eat on that food garbage, and then he feeds that to the fish, and then the fish are harvested. He's got these like little things that they're like circular. So, you know, one thing leads to another. You know, he's a successful aquaculture farmer, and there's so many different things that people could be doing that they're not aware of, and it's sad that we're just kind of blindly going into this whole New World Order, thinking that we're overpopulated. People that think we're overpopulated should drive through Wyoming, or they should come out in your area.
Yeah, drive through Texas, drive through West Texas. You know, we've got enough windmills over here to hold a lot more population, and God, we got enough space here. You know, the rest of the world could move into Texas. Probably wouldn't let them.
When I was out in, when I was in prison, I took instruction on how to design solar energy systems, the solar panels. At that point, I found out about the CSP, which means concentrated solar power, and then they also have these CPVs, concentrated photovoltaics. Anyway, what I learned is that there were some communities like where you used to live in Arizona, they put in a CPV, and what it is it concentrates the sun's energy, and an entire community of, like, let's say you had like 20 homes, they could all be powered by this it is a parabolic it's a parabolic panel that concentrates the sun's energy, and it's much more powerful than solar energy, these solar panels. So, like you were saying, there's these other things that have been invented, the perpetual motion, perpetual energy devices, and unfortunately they're not widely known about. And so I would encourage people that want to do like what you've been suggesting, that they get out there and they investigate, because there are inventors that are coming up with this stuff, the controlled media is not going to tell us about it. You just got to get out there and talk to people.
You've really caught my interest now, and what you're saying is absolutely right. It's really pretty simple, guys. Go out and knock on your neighbor's door. Do you know who your neighbor is? I lived in Miami for 8 years. I never had any idea who more than one neighbor was. Go knock on their door. Say, hey, how would you like to become a part of becoming self-sufficient? Now, this parabolic mirror, you know, we've got stoves that concentrate the sunlight and will cook your food. Kind of like a parabolic mirror. And
yeah.
And if you, what's one of our oldest forms of transportation? Steam. If you use the sun's rays just like a magnifying glass, took one of those big television screens and focused that, you can generate a few thousand degrees of heat, or at least hundreds, enough to boil water, and you got a steam generator. Don't have to use any gas. Can we build steam generators?
Right.
You know, Fritz, we've had the answers for 100 years here in this country, but the control of the media, when the Federal Reserve took over and started buying up all of the newspapers, and then all of the television stations, and they own Hollywood.
Yeah, Hollywood.
We lost all that.
Well, talking about how we've had the solution, you know, everybody used to have their own garden. And in talking with the hierarchy, because I interact with these people, these dark-hearted people, they have this thing of where it eases their conscience, but they have put out all of this GMO food, all this junk food that's so enticing. You know, I'm like everybody else. I look at these food ads, and they're attractive, and you start to eat this fast food or the processed food, and it tastes good because they have done so much research on how to make the food addictive. But the thing of it is it's good-looking poison. And people could go back to what we used to do, and that's having your own garden. Because let me tell you, people, the way the elite is thinking, the people that are bringing in this New World Order, they're giving us poison in the form of what looks like attractive food. And if we're stupid enough to eat it, then we deserve to die. That's their attitude. It's making us healthy. You know, they're creating heart attacks and all these other things that are killing us. It's a slow death. It's death by eating. And we need to go back to the healthy food that we can grow ourselves. And not only that, but gardening is therapeutic. You know, there's a lot of joy in growing plants. It gives you a peace of mind as you go out there in the fresh air. So, you know, I encourage people to relearn the skills of growing your own healthy food instead of eating their food that's laced with all their modified genetics and toxins.
Well, I really appreciate you giving me an introduction into the next. This is you know, I told you I believe that burning bushes are just passé, and then this is the 21st century, and in the 21st century, I believe God's alive and well and uses the internet.
Yeah, he works through us, you know. That's what people don't necessarily appreciate. They want him to come down and sovereignly do it. And what he's told us, hey, it's like when Christ was here, he said, I'm going to send you out to all of these villages to talk to the people, right? he's not going to write something miraculously in the sky, you know, I'm God, now give your life to me. He sends people out to do his work. He has entrusted us with his work, and that's the way he's decided to do it. And so, you know, he works through people like you and I, working through the internet, as long as we have the internet that we can use. At a certain point, you know, they're going to rope that in. It's like the wild woolly west. They're only going to allow this frontier situation, which is lawless, to go on for so long, and then at a certain point they're going to bring in their control. Just like, as you know, anywhere you go in western United States, it seems like the government's there to micromanage everything.
Yes. Yes. And on this thing, you talk about the slow poisoning. I mean, this is exactly what I had been planning on talking about for the last 2 or 3 weeks. On September 24th in 1955, President Eisenhower, World War II hero and beloved president, the one that warned us about the military-industrial complex, I might add, was playing golf at his Denver home when he suddenly collapsed from what was a rare disease at the time. He had a heart attack. Although nobody knew it then, and though you won't read about it in any history book, this was a watershed moment that would change the course of modern medicine forever. One that would make heart attack the #1 killer of Americans and would establish Big Pharma as America's #1 most profitable industry. And you know, Fritz, I have talked about what the markup is on the drugs that Big Pharma puts on us.
I need your last four.
My what?
Your last four.
4960.
496.
They have they make more money off of pharmaceuticals than they make off the cocaine and the heroin they smuggle into the country. And in my book Mystery Babylon, I documented who was behind the smuggling of cocaine into this country. It's a name that you might recognize, President George Bush, and he had partners like Manuel Noriega and Bill Clinton, whose job as governor was to keep a little place called Mena, Arkansas, secure. Now, this Eisenhower, the story that we're going to be talking about later, has a huge implications for your personal health and that of your family. If you or a loved one has been diagnosed with heart disease, you need to know the exact details of what took place, because this story doesn't just tell you who is responsible, it tells you why. Heart disease rates have soared since 1955, even as consumption of heart-healthy foods and cholesterol-lowering drugs has skyrocketed. While you could become a victim of this drug-induced tragedy, no matter your cholesterol levels are in take effect. And 100 billion reasons why Big Pharma will never cure heart disease, or cancer for that matter. And I've interviewed that gentleman from Canada who was curing cancer with marijuana. He made hash oil out of it, and it cured cancer. They don't.
Well, insiders have told me that they have the cures for cancer and heart disease. So, and then, of course, if you get into alternative medicine, you'll notice that there's a number of cures that are available through alternative medicine. So, the cures are there, but they're being suppressed. And you think about during our lifetime, Clayton, that they have been getting millions, actually it adds up to billions of dollars from the government every year to do research in how to fight cancer. And when you realize that they already have the answer, then you realize they're never going to find the answer publicly, because they're milking the government for millions of dollars for research, but they have already sequestered the actual answers. And years ago, you may know this, Clay, I was Amish, and I went to Tijuana, Mexico, and a lot of people go there because they've got a dozen different major alternative cancer treatments there. So people that don't like to get our fascist be part of our fascist medical system, which is not going to give them the freedom to cure their cancer, they will go to Tijuana, Mexico. It's a sad state of affairs that you have to go to Mexico for medical freedom, but anyway, there's some answers there.
This having the cures of these diseases, I mean, this is what this story is about. I'll get into that later, or as we go on. I'll show. This is all Big Pharma. To me, this is Big Pharma, and Big Pharma is the reason that we invaded Afghanistan. Those nasty old Taliban that you've heard so much about, those nasty old Taliban were destroying the opium poppy crops. Oh, that's not good for our economy, because Big Pharma uses a lot of that opium, don't they? And then they run it into Russia, and they run it back over to here, and we've still got heroin addicts on the streets in America. That's what the Boxer Revolution was all about.
Yeah, the Chinese were trying to keep from us, our elite, imposing addictions on their people, but they lost, and our elite, like the Delano family and the Astor family and some of these other families that I expose in my Bloodlines Illuminati book, they were making big bucks off of running drugs, opium, to China. And we still have the same families around running things, and they're like a mafia.
I call it the Khazarian Mafia, just so you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, it really is the answer. The answer to this whole new world order is really pretty simple, and you've explained it. Talk to your neighbors. Work with your neighbors. Don't try to solve the world's problem, because these people control the newspapers, they control the television, they control the news services, and they control your money. Remember Carl Klang, another gentleman whose life has been destroyed by these people. He, I don't know whether he was went insane, or whether he got, I don't know what happened to him. He's never called me or anything. But he said, you know, if you got your very own printing press, you can print enough money to buy up the whole neighborhood. And that's really what they've done, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Bought up the whole neighborhood and turned it so you keep paying out that $100, $200 a month for power, so you can turn that light switch on. And
I went back to the Amish community that I had left in the late 70s. 2 years ago, during the summer, I went back to this Missouri community, and I had wondered, you know, how are these people doing? They're out of the system. They don't have electricity. They live off of their gardens. You know, they're horse and buggy. They have windmills. You know, the economy is bad, so these people must be really suffering since they're marginal. They're on the edge of society. I wondered how these people were doing it, you know, because there's so much economic stress in this country. And it turned out, I was totally blown away, totally surprised, because this one church and an Amish settlement will be like 20, 22 families, because they have church in the homes. So once they get so large, they have to split and create another church district. Well, this one church is now 16 thriving church districts. I was blown away, and they're not just not surviving, but they are thriving. They are healthy, and they're, you might say, healthy, wealthy, and wise in a way. I mean, not when I say wealthy, I don't mean that they're stinking rich, but they're certainly building the barns and all of the things that they need to live a good, healthy, comfortable life. And I was just blown away. It was clear proof that somebody, if they're hardworking and intelligent, can step outside of the system and with their own communities working together, thrive. And so your idea of these liberty communities, there's definitely the possibility there for people to get together and work together and be successful.
I think it's more than possible. I think it's necessary. If you want to survive, folks, you need to grab this idea and run with it. And, you know, the information you're getting on the show today is invaluable. I mean, really, folks. This, let me give you a little. If you think going to, you know, my grandmother and mother, I was raised by them. On my mother's side, they were drug addicts. They were drug addicts. We went to the doctor twice a month, and I sat in the waiting room and read the magazines at about 5 or 6 years old. And yeah, the public school system didn't teach me to read. My grandfather did before he died. And on my other side, on my father's side, my grandfather was a Methodist preacher, and they at the house next door to the church in Weatherford, Texas, my grandmother had a garden, a victory garden, and the best food, the best meals I ever ate came from her garden. She did her canning, she did her preservatives, whatever she did it really, really well. Really, really well. And I think we need to do that today. Now, I grew up, didn't really have much. I still got my tonsils, I still got my appendix, and I also might add that I smoked marijuana for 45 years. I was really excited when we got medical marijuana in Arizona. I said, wow, I may not be a criminal anymore. How cool. Turns out I couldn't get medical marijuana because I didn't have any doctors. And I said, well, the reason I don't have any doctors is I've been smoking it for 45 years. But this story that I want to talk about Eisenhower, he had this heart attack, and after that, heart disease rates have soared since 1955. Even as consumption of heart-healthy foods and cholesterol-lowering drugs has skyrocketed. You can become a victim of this drug-induced tragedy no matter your cholesterol levels or intake of fat. And there's 100 billion reasons why Big Pharma will never cure heart disease. Historian Larry Shekart calls it the single most important medical case of the 20th century, yet the real story behind it is virtually unknown. Within 24 hours of Ike's heart attack, special interests seized the opportunity. They manufactured a crisis, a founding myth, and a solution, and they shoved this propaganda down the American public's throat. In doing so, they single-handedly sent America's health spiraling downhill for the next 6 decades. And over the next few minutes, I'll expose this 60-year-old big pharma conspiracy. I'll name the names. I'll track the money in each stage. I'll answer the big question, who benefits? What's more, we're going to reveal how you can safeguard yourself from heart disease forever with solutions that are 100% natural, affordable, and effective. And I've got Fritz Springmeier up. We're coming up onto the break on Truth Radio and Crusade. We'll be back with you in a moment. All right. Fritz, you've stayed with me a lot longer than you planned on. You're welcome to stay with me as long as you want. I really appreciate the input that I'm getting from you.
Well, it sounds like you've got something to roll with. I'm gonna let you continue. You're doing a good job, and I'm going to go on with my day. It turned out really well. Thank you so much for having the patience with me. I apologize again for everything I put you through.
No problem.
But I appreciated being on the show, and I think it's going to be a good show for your listeners. And anyway, you have a good day, and we will talk again later.
All right, sir. It'll all be up on Facebook and YouTube at Free American 69. It'll also be up on freeamerican.com. And if you want to tell people how they can get your book, you've still got it available.
Well, yeah,
I've got your website linked too on under this show.
Okay.
On my site. Your website's
Okay.
linked.
Well, that will work.
Pen track.
We'll take care, brother, and we will talk some more later, okay?
All right. God bless you. You're doing good work. Stay alive.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. Hang on a second. I will do an ad for somebody while I get more coffee.
Hello, friends. This is RJ, the Mighty Phoenix. Friends, if you're a business owner and need capital to sustain and perpetuate your business, and if you've been in business for 2 years or more,
hints, terrible harbingers
and your
of what might be
fiscals are low,
expected should the
as
Soviet
low
Union
as
overrun Germany
500,
were nothing new.
I can help you. Credit scores don't pay back with money that you borrow. Credit scores are only weapons being used against you in the war on small business. You pay back money that you borrow with business monies earned. So if you have 6 recent bank statements and your business is active, and as I said, you've been in business for over 2 years, I can get you money within 8 business days. Contact me at R as in Russell, J as in James, P as in Peter, P as in Peter again, A as in Arthur, P as in Peter again, A as in Arthur, at yahoo.com. That's RJPPAPA at yahoo.com. And if you're not in business and you need to earn extra cash and you don't want to go out and work for someone who's going to take advantage of you, or you don't want to spend the money to gas and get paid minimum wage, you can work with me, not for me, and earn big commissions. And all you need to do is place ads on the computer, on the internet, on Craigslist, on Backpage, on other sites, in the financial section. Only 15 minutes a day. Again, contact me at rjpPAPA@yahoo.com. Leave your cell phone number. I'll get back to you within 24 hours. And we'll discuss the issue. I can help you. Again, rjpPAPA TATA@yahoo.com. Have a great day, folks.
All right, we're back again here. Back again, still got Blog Talk up, still recording here on YouTube. That was Fritz Springmeier. And let's see here. Hey, who have we got here? Okay, Kashi's in there, Cyanide in there. Cosventura, who's probably Ted. Dr. D-Charge is with me as always. And, where about this? Let's go back to the Israeli. This is if you don't, when we talk about the Jews, even Gordon Duff on Veterans Today talked about, well, you were talking about the fucking Jews. Yeah, I sure was.
To discuss this further, let's go to Madison and talk to Dr. Kevin Barrett, author and political commentator.
And here is Dr. Kevin Barrett from Veterans Today.
Two Israeli American tycoons dictating to the world, in this case to the West, their own agenda, and threatening them with consequences if they don't keep silent in the face of Israeli crimes and rights violations. I mean, how is this possible? How can they be allowed to threaten free speech in the West when their own agenda is being exposed?
It is unbelievable, isn't it? These multi-billionaire supporters of extreme right-wing Likudnik Zionism, Sheldon Adelson, Chaim Saban, and Adam Milstein, I guess, and a bunch of others as well, have gathered in a private meeting in a Las Vegas casino to discuss how to try to crush the growing boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. So a grassroots movement that is simply working for justice, trying to stop the unending series of war crimes being committed by the genocidal Zionist entity, because that's what it is. It's trying to completely eliminate the Palestinian people, uproot them, destroy their culture, and ultimately ban them from their own homeland. This group of billionaires has taken up arms. And it's interesting that they're doing this in a casino. Sheldon Adelson, the host of this event, is, let's just say, he's the heir to Meyer Lansky. You may remember that the banker to the mafia and then the man who controlled the entire American organized crime syndicate, Meyer Lansky, was chased out of Cuba by the Cuban Revolution. And where did he move his syndicate? Las Vegas. Well, guess who now runs Las Vegas? Sheldon Adelson is the new Meyer Lansky. So we have essentially the godfather of godfathers here, threatening to try to crush this idealistic grassroots movement that's making so much headway trying to defend the rights of Palestinians and the apartheid state that is crushing Palestine. I think they must be panicking to be calling this kind of emergency meeting. In the past, they were trying to ignore BDS, and it's reached the point now they can no longer ignore it, and this is going to backfire big time. Everybody around the world who looks at this and says, these organized crime capos meeting in Las Vegas to destroy a bunch of young idealistic college students, come on, I mean, who's going to win that PR battle? So I think it's yet another case of the extremist Zionists shooting themselves in the foot.
And of course, it's not the first time Israel and its lobbies around the world are blackmailing politicians and businesses and even Hollywood celebrities to keep them in line with their own agenda. I mean, what kind of global impunity can allow them to act so blatantly and get away with it?
Well, unfortunately, the world is governed more by money than by justice. Democracy is a thin facade. And so the question is, who has the money? Here in the United States, the Zionist power configuration, or ZPC, as American sociology professor James Petrus has called it, includes dozens of billionaires, hundreds of millionaires, and they have about 500,000 foot soldiers, people who are tireless lobbyists for the Zionist agenda. And these people will make your life miserable if you cross them. They will use their money, they will use their activists, and if necessary, they will use their organized crime assets, and you better believe that Adelson has plenty of those, to mess with you if you cross them. So their threats against businesses are credible. But the question is, can a group of corrupt thugs like these Las Vegas billionaire crime magnates stop a popular movement that's mostly just penniless college students? How can they threaten thousands and tens, hundreds of thousands of hardworking activists around the world? They can lean on businesses. They can go after a CEO of a business and say, you better not respect BDS or we're going to mess with you. But how can they go after all of these activists? It's not going to work. It's just going to backfire. We'll get more and more activists working harder and harder. And in the end, the Zionist apartheid entity will go down.
Indeed. Dr. Kevin Barrett, author and political commentator from Madison. As always, thanks for your thoughts there, sir.
All right. We got that. And let me see, do I have that up? Yes, I do. Okay, that's up on our Facebook. Now, let me see here, where we've got, Pastor Manning has something to say. This is a black minister out of New York, James Manning. I've had him on my show before. Let's see what we got.
Liberals in the North. Not only are they willing to defend, and
Now we're talking about the rebel flag here. This is the Manning report.
There are men that are ready right now to defend the nation against the liberals in the North. Not only are they willing to defend, and I want this to be clear. They're men. You may call them Confederates, you may call them Southerners, you can call them what you choose. But in their hearts, let me help you understand what's in their hearts. They are ready to defend this nation, not only to defend their own home, their own states. That's not just their cause. They're not only ready to defend their way of life, to defend their children from having to go to public schools where their children are taught that sodomy is right, that man with man is good and girl with girl is good, and Bruce Jenner becomes the order of the day. They're not going to let you do that. They're not going to let you do that. These men, they're not going to let you do that, and I agree. You ought to be dead and in your grave. Any man that allows a person in the government to tell your child that Bruce Jenner is a hero of the sodomite sort should not have a right to live. And there are people who have taken up arms, not just because of the Confederate flag issue. That's the straw that broke the camel's back. But they're not going to let you do this to their children. And God will not let a man in heaven who allows his children to be taught that sodomy is right. God will not allow you in heaven. And so these men have taken up arms. But not only are they going to defend their families and defend their farms and defend their businesses and defend their way of life, defend the word of God and defend Jesus, because the sodomites are lying on Jesus, twisting his words about love, twisting his words about gender, twisting his words about his blood. They're not going to let you do that. They'd rather die on a battlefield than let you northerners, you liberals, you wretched of the Lord, impose this will upon them. They're going to defend themselves with arms. They're locked and loaded. But the other thing is, they want to defend the North. Someone has to defend, someone has to come and rescue the North. Someone has to come and rescue the North from the melting pots of the likes of Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton, parading around at will, ad hominem, doing whatsoever they want to do, speaking whatsoever they want to speak, creating ghettos, starting riots, burning down buildings, overturning police cars. The North can't defend itself against that. The Southerners are ready to march north all the way to Massachusetts, to Boston, and defend the North and retrieve the North, restore it back to a sense where people can live together in harmony. The northern ghettos are wretched. The city of Detroit is burning. The city of Chicago, the Confederates, those that are ready to defend this nation, needs to march into Chicago and stop the 20 and 30 shootings and killings in Chicago every day. Or the same thing, march against the Bloods and the Crips in Los Angeles and in the South Bronx. They not only are going to defend themselves, as I've stated now for the second time, and they have every right. I will not honor a man that will allow his child to be taught, whether it's about the Supreme Court, about some sissified school teacher, that sodomy is right. My brother, if you let your child be taught that you are not worthy of God, you're not worthy of a seat in heaven. And if I be the judge during the days of the regeneration, I will send you to hell. I will send every man to hell that will not take up, that will not defend his child against this perversion of God's word and against God himself as these perverts. I will not allow you in heaven. And they're deep in the heart of Dixie are these sentiments. They will march north in the days to come to rescue the North, from the burning cities, from the runaway unemployment, from the massive crime that goes on like the sun shining, the crime waves, the massive hatred, the massive allowance of the likes of an Al Sharpton or Jesse Jackson, the massive institution like Harvard, teaching perversion, teaching socialism, teaching against the Constitution. Many are prepared to march on the Supreme Court and to storm the White House. I say to all Americans and people of goodwill worldwide that you should not be concerned so much now about ISIS or about Islamic flying a flag over the White House. What you need to be concerned about now is a Confederate flag being flown over the White House. That is more real than your breakfast cereal. That fact that a Confederate flag can soon fly over the White House, over these mayor's offices, over these state capitals, in these wretched cities of burning like Detroit, Chicago, that will be rescued. This will be sweet, if you will, justice of what happened in the first war. Because surely the Confederates and the South will win this time. There's no doubt about it. They will win this time. Be ye ever so mindful. Be ye ever so mindful. You're not going to push this sodomy. You allow this Kenyan African who hates Jesus. Obama hates Jesus. He hates America. He hates the Constitution. Just look at Jeremiah Wright, his father in the perverted ministry, or James Cone, or others. Obama hates America. He hates the Constitution. And yet, these Northerners and these liberals put a hater of God, a hater of the Bible, a hater of the blood of Jesus in the White House. And it must be rescued. It must be rescued the way the Union forces claim they were rescuing the sons of slaves and slaves in the Civil War. Now the nation must be rescued from the liberal God haters and Constitution haters and those that are pushing this sodomy agenda. America will be rescued, and the rescuers will be the Confederates, the Southerners, those that have been blood-washed, blood-bought, Bible-believing, locked and loaded. Me, I'm James David Manning, and I want to be one of them. I'm the Lord's servant.
All right, thank you, Pastor Manning. Now, let me go back to this whole pharmaceutical thing that we talked about. The smoking gun has been uncovered. Got a photograph here of General Eisenhower gives his famous full victory, nothing less speech to the U.S. Company E, 502nd Parachute Infantry Regiment of the 101st Airborne Division the night before the D-Day invasion of France. On June 6, 1944, now known as D-Day, future President Dwight David Eisenhower, then Supreme Commander of the Allied Expeditionary Forces, in World War II, gave the go-ahead for the massive invasion of Europe called Operation Overlord. He told the troops, "The eyes of the world are upon you," and called the operation a crusade in which we will accept nothing less than full victory. Following the successful Normandy invasion, Allied forces under Eisenhower broke the beachhead and began driving across France in early 1945. The Allies pushed the Nazis out of France. By May 7, 1945, the Nazis formally surrendered, ending the war in Europe. Eisenhower's leadership and fame would win him the presidency 7 years later. Many fondly remember him as one of the last great presidents. Regardless of my feelings here that we fought on the wrong side, that the Germans were better under Hitler than we are under Obama today, doesn't matter. General Eisenhower was Jewish, and he went along with the worldwide agenda because the banksters controlled the United States in. So he is at no more fault than all of our World War II veterans or the veterans of Meyer that went to Vietnam based on a lie. But this writer said, before I go into detail of this story any further, how it spun off the #1 heart disease lies before claiming Eisenhower at first victim. Allow me to introduce myself. You see, I've spent the last 30 years fighting Big Pharma on behalf of my patients. Since graduating from medical school 3 decades ago, I've worked hard to develop a different kind of practice, one that makes the health of my patients my highest priority, even if that means bucking the respectable health establishment. The truth is, conventional medicine, for all its genius and innovations, has failed the everyday America. It has enriched a few corrupt government bureaucrats and their crony CEOs at the expense of your health. And it's done so under the cover of clever marketing disguised as scientific research. That's why I help my patients read between the lines and open the curtains on Big Pharma's facade. There is no bigger lie than the heart disease myth I'm debunking today. Dr. George Mann, a lead researcher in the legendary Framingham Heart Studies, calls it the greatest scam in the history of medicine. The lie developed by junk science, advertised by corporate interests, and rubber-stamped by bought-off politicians. It only remains a fact because it supports Big Pharma's $100 billion a year cholesterol-lowering drug industry. President Eisenhower was the first victim of this grand conspiracy, and it didn't stop there. Since then, it's claimed the lives of 950,000 Americans every year, adding up to millions over the last decade. The odds are you or somebody you know is a victim of it too. But the good news is it does not have to be this way. This is coming from Dr. Al Sears, medical doctor, uniquely qualified to keep you healthier for life. Dr. Sears currently owns and operates a successive integrative medicine and anti-aging clinic in Royal Palm Beach, Florida, with over 25,000 patients. His cutting-edge therapies and reputation for solving some of the most difficult to diagnose cases attracts patients from all over the world. As a graduate of the University of South Florida College of Medicine, Dr. Sears scored in the 99th percentile on his MCAT and graduated with honors in the internal medicine, neurology, psychiatry, and physical medicine. After entering private practice, Dr. Sears was one of the first to be board certified in an anti-aging medicine. As a pioneer in this new field of medicine, He is an avid researcher, published author, and enthusiastic lecturer. He's the first doctor licensed in U.S. to administer TA-65, the most important breakthrough in anti-aging medicine. He's been featured on ABC, NBC, ESPN, History Channel, National Geographic. There are alternative therapies you can use to prevent and even reverse heart disease. Let me get back there. Without expensive drugs, procedures, or even doctor's visits. There are safe treatments that could rid your body of heart disease. Treatments you can apply from home for pennies on the dollar. But they're natural, so Big Pharma can't patent them. That's why they do not want you to hear about them. In a moment, I'll share with you the shocking details of the 9 censored heart solutions, where you can find them at your local grocery store, health food store, or pharmacy, and how you can start using them today. If you're one of 70% of Americans suffering from some form of heart disease, I urge you to continue listening for the details. What you're about to hear could save you a fortune on insanely expensive heart procedures. Conventional therapies like the $1,500 a pop statin, cholesterol-lowering drug prescription, a $40,000 coronary stent, $200,000 or more coronary bypass surgery. These so-called therapies not only put your life at risk, they could also deplete or even wipe out your entire retirement savings, even if you have health insurance or Medicare. According to NBC, medical bills are America's #1 cause of bankruptcy, with 1.7 million Americans going bankrupt every year, and procedures like open heart surgery are some of the most expensive out there. The worst part is it's all for nothing. Did you know that, for instance, 85% of heart bypass surgeries are unnecessary, yet specialists love them because they cost $200,000 or more? Not a bad payday. The statin drug guidelines are so broad that almost 90% of new users are being prescribed drugs they don't need. Eisenhower's farewell address. President Eisenhower warns the public as he leaves office on January 17, 1961. You've heard about Eisenhower's famous farewell address and his warning of the undue influence warranted by the military-industrial complex. Eisenhower was no stranger to the dangers of monopoly corporations pulling the strings of government to increase their power and influence. What made the military-industrial complex all the more dangerous was its ability to manufacture enemies in crisis, which then stirs the American public into a war frenzy, leading to greater war spending and profits. Big Pharma, the medical-industrial complex, is no different. They can as easily manufacture health crises, epidemics that call for new drugs and therapies, which the unelected FDA then rubber stamps. But you shouldn't waste another cent of your hard-earned money on deadly surgeries or drugs. As you're about to see, there are 9 life-saving alternatives that are 100% safe, effective, and inexpensive. Today, I'll shed light on each of these, the FDA's efforts to censor them, the independent studies backing their healing power, and all the facts you need to build a disease-proof heart. But before I do, let me tell you about the real background story behind Big Pharma's mother of all lies and how it ultimately took President Eisenhower's life. It's a story that was unreported until recently. When I dug deep into history, I found the scheming and intrigue behind this myth was astonishing. It implicates prestigious researchers, non-profit associations, and their big donors, which is why this story remains censored to this day. In fact, Eisenhower even warned of this secret plot. And while everybody knows he warned of the military-industrial complex, during his farewell address. Virtually nobody knows about his other warning, a warning just as ominous for the American public, if not more so. Near the end of his farewell address to America, Ike warned of the scientific technological elite. These political and scientific insiders were not interested in the truth, not interested in real science, and not interested in the American public's well-being. They were the new foot soldiers of the medical industrial complex, a small clique of career-obsessed bureaucrats only interested in profit. Their research serves as a marketing tool for highly lucrative drugs, but it does nothing to improve public health. Ike saw this development as the end of scientific discovery and curiosity. You see, during World War II, when then General Eisenhower was fighting for American freedoms, a small group of drug companies was working against our freedoms. They pulled strings in government, they consolidated and grabbed market share. By the Eisenhower era, the drug industry was dominated by a handful of conglomerates, a cartel we know today as Big Pharma. They were already leveraging control of scientific research for massive profits. Eisenhower undoubtedly saw this trend, as you're about to see. He even experienced the results personally. But he knew this would shape America's health in the decades ahead. But this part of Ike's address was all but ignored, censored, and off the record. And that's unfortunate, because it has mushroomed exponentially since that address. Scientists who support facts for Big Pharma's profit in their own careers are putting everyday Americans in imminent danger. That's why it's imperative you heed Ike's warning if you're concerned about your own health and that of your family. The very first victory in this new scientific technological elite took place on September 24th, 1955, within 24 hours of Ike's famous heart attack. It was the day everything changed. Even though 950,000 people still die every year as a direct result, and although these deaths are easily preventable, I doubt 1 in 10,000 Americans know about September 24th, 1955. The events on this dark day triggered a 6-decade propaganda campaign, one that misled doctors and scientists to focus on the wrong causes of heart disease, ignore hundreds of natural, inexpensive, and safe heart disease treatments, and instead prescribe dangerous drugs that actually make heart problems worse, along with 300 other deadly side effects. After Eisenhower's heart attack, Big Pharma kicked off their campaign of deception. Their public relations experts immediately appeared on TV and told America a frightening story. They claimed a devastating new epidemic of heart disease, and they blamed excess fats and cholesterol in America's diet. To confront this crisis, they declared a new war, a war on fat. They labeled all fat as evil, especially saturated fat. They demonized entire categories of so-called fatty foods. In turn, experts proposed radical changes to the American way of life. They recommended that Americans stop smoking and engage in 30 minutes of cardio each day, adopt a prudent diet, a low-cholesterol diet consisting of corn oil, margarine, chicken, and cold cereal. What was their real agenda and who benefited? According to the Harvard School of Medicine, the food company saw a tremendous marketing opportunity and re-engineered thousands of food to be lower in fat or fat-free. But in order to make their agenda stick, they needed someone famous as a role model for everyday Americans. Who could fit that bill better than Eisenhower, war hero and beloved president? And as you're about to see here, they not only made Ike the guinea pig for their hypotheses, they used the press coverage of Eisenhower's recovery as free advertising. Now, this is how the cholesterol hoax destroyed the once healthy American lifestyle. Twice a day for 6 months, the press covered every aspect of Ike's recovery, every medicine, every dietary guidelines. They instructed the public on the danger of coronary disease, For the first time, cholesterol entered the public vocabulary. It became a dangerous evil, a monster, a villain. They portrayed cholesterol as the new polio. Many millions of Americans, frightened by the new epidemic, quickly embraced any solution that the so-called experts handed out. When the dust settled, Americans learned to watch fat and cholesterol in their diets. But there was one big problem with all of this, that none of it was true, not a single word of it. As the Wall Street Journal reported recently, there's never been any solid evidence for the idea that saturated fats cause heart disease. In fact, later research would confirm these fats have plenty of proven health benefits, including preventing and reversing heart disease. But once facts like this are born, they never seem to die, no matter the research or studies that disprove them, not when there's so much money at stake. You see, this myth not only gave birth to poor dietary guidelines, but also spawned the most lucrative class of drugs ever invented. This includes the most lucrative and deadliest drug known to mankind. Sales to date from this drug alone have totaled a whopping $140 billion, and this number one cash cow hinges from one single myth. That's why it will not go away easily. Your own doctor is likely to believe it, but you'll be surprised at just how little research there is to back it. In a minute, you'll hear the details of how Ike was the first victim. But first, let me expose how they used Ike's own doctor to administer their poison. Ike is Big Pharma's guinea pig, although type scientists and researchers were rallying behind the new myth. Ike's doctor debunks a hoax on censored national broadcast. In 1950, the American Heart Association fundraiser aired on 3 major television networks. Panelists linked heart disease with cholesterol and fats. They proposed the prudent diet as a solution, one in which corn oil, margarine, chickens, cold cereal replaced butter, lard, fat, and eggs. But Dr. Paul Dudley White dissented, at least at first. He observed that heart disease was non-existent in 1900 when egg consumption was 3 times what it was in 1956 and when corn oil was available. White nailed it right on the head when he said, "I began my practice as a cardiologist in 1921, and I never saw a heart attack patient until 1928. Back in the heart attack-free days before 1920, the fats were butter and lard, and I think we would all benefit from the kind of diet we had then when no one had ever heard the word corn oil." There was one detractor. Dr. Paul Dudley White, Harvard College cardiologist and Eisenhower's perfect personal physician. White knew this cholesterol mythology was 100% false, yet in fact he publicly debunked it in a live broadcast and a panel debate with his peers. But here's the incredible thing. Even with no new research, studies, or trials to support the cholesterol hypotheses, Dr. White reversed his position, jumped on the bandwagon for the sake of his own career. Is it a coincidence? Eisenhower's own doctor was a perfect example of the scientific, technological elite. I'll leave that for you to decide. You see, this diet had powerful backers from Big Pharma and Big Agriculture, like Procter & Gamble, with billions of dollars on the table, selling vegetable oils in the place of fat-heavy cooking. P&G's funding even helped transform the American Heart Association into a powerhouse organization. In fact, the AHA, American Heart Association, the most avid proponent of the lipid theory, Fred Mattson was a scientist and shill for Procter & Gamble. Mattson even helped P&G develop Olesterol, a cholesterol-free replacement for fat in foods and cooking oils. In 1958, 2 years after Eisenhower's heart attack, Kraft introduced polyunsaturated margarine to the market, a product they advertised as a heart-healthy alternative to butter. With this kind of money at stake, the increasingly powerful drug and food conglomerates weren't taking any chances. In fact, that's why they hired the leading medical experts to tout the new party line today. Drug companies still recruit key opinion leaders as hired guns for their marketing campaigns. These top physicians endorse big pharma's drugs. In turn, they receive celebrity status and popularity. They enforce big pharma's idea on the medical community. This includes ostracizing and blacklisting doctors who buck the status quo. These mouthpieces for big pharma embody the very scientific technological elite that Eisenhower warned of. Was Ike killed by rat poison? The year before Eisenhower's attack, Bristol-Myers used a new blood thinner, Coumadin. Bristol-Myers' new blood thinner, Coumadin, received FDA approval. Before that, it was used as rat poison. The National Poison Center still labels Wayfair, the generic name for Coumadin, a dangerous roticide. And guess who was the first one selected to test drive the drug? That's right, Dr. Paul Dudley prescribed this rat poison to Eisenhower during the president's recovery. The move was profitable, big pharma, but disastrous for Ike's health. When the media reported on Eisenhower's use of Coumadin, it instantly became the popular go-to drug for blood clot prevention. Now it's one of the top 10 most prescribed drugs in the world. One that hands big pharma $15.3 billion per year, is growing by day. But did anyone hear about Eisenhower's awful symptoms and side effects? While he was still on the drug, Ike developed chronic inflammatory of his intestines. His medical condition was critical, even requiring a bowel surgery. So his doctors temporarily suspended his Coumadin therapy. After recovered, Ike once again began to take Coumadin, which led to a brain hemorrhage in 1957. Yet the media, his doctors, failed to make the connection between Ike's diminishing health and this dangerous blood thinner. Dr. White emerged as one of those leaders in the 1950s. And that's why he would not only go along with this new dogma, supporting ideas he knew were dead wrong, and aiding in the corruption of the medical knowledge, but would even turn around and prescribe the very same diet to Ike. Thanks to this move, the link between cholesterol and heart disease became gospel. Yet not a shred of research supported it. No studies, no trials, nothing. Americans swallowed the propaganda like an overpriced pill. Everyone knew the evils of fat and cholesterol in their diets. Yet amazingly, nobody heard about the Eisenhower paradox. Ironically, Eisenhower's own condition used by Big Pharma to push their agenda 100% contradicted the cholesterol myth. By the time of his heart attack, Eisenhower's cholesterol was on only 165 milligram DL. Ike also exercised every day and kept a perfect weight of 172. In other words, he seemed to be in perfect condition, and Ike's case was hardly unusual. According to a published analysis of the Framingham Heart Study, 75% of patients admitted to the hospital for heart attacks have normal cholesterol levels. In short, cholesterol is a terrible predictor of heart disease. That should have been the lesson, the end of the story, but Americans didn't hear about this from the media. All they heard about was on Eisenhower's new cholesterol-free diet. Eisenhower eats but twice daily in a regime of health and play, came out in the New York Times September 21st, 1955. He replaced butter with hydrogenated soy oils and margarine full of dangerous trans fat. He no longer ate eggs, bacon, and steak for breakfast, and over time, at the insistence of Dr. White, his diet regime grew stricter. And some days he would eat nothing but grapefruit and Melville toast. The press carefully reported every detail. As a result, Americans jumped on board the new healthy, heart-healthy fat diet fad, but this diet came with dire consequences for Ike's health, mind, and body, and the same suffering millions of Americans would experience over the next 59 years and still experience today. Alright, let's cut to the chase here. The results are clear. According to the Harvard School of Public Health, back in the 1960s, when Americans consumed more fat, the rate of obesity was 13% and only 1% suffered from type 2 diabetes. Although we consume much less fat in our diets, the rate of obesity has soared as high as 45%, and 8% now suffer from type 2 diabetes. This is from Harvard University. Could you think of a more reliable source? The bottom line, Harvard study concludes, the low-fat diet hasn't helped us to control weight or become healthier. President Eisenhower, our own experience, is a case in point. After Ike began this heart-healthy diet, his cholesterol levels soared. They jumped from 165 to 195 to 225 to 259. His weight skyrocketed too. The president grew increasingly frustrated, even obsessed with his cholesterol. At one point, he checked his levels 10 times each year. The more his cholesterol soared, the more religiously Ike stuck to the diet, a fact that dumbfounded his team of top physicians and enraged the president. It got so bad the president's doctors even started lying to him about his real levels, but this didn't stop the experts from continuing to push this mythology. 6 days before Ike's cholesterol reached 259, Ansel Keys, a protege of Eisenhower's doctor, published his famous 7-country studies. In fact, Dr. Paul Dudley White helped Keys secure government funding for the study. It was the junk science that kicked off the cholesterol myth. The study famously linked heart disease and cholesterol levels. It championed the same cholesterol-free diet that Eisenhower personally knew was false. And it established the lipid hypothesis as accepted fact. But here's what no one knew at the time. Ansel Keys cherry-picked the evidence so he could associate heart disease with fat and cholesterol intake. Keys studied 22 countries, but only focused on 6 countries which supported his thesis. The 16 other countries actually disproved his entire idea, but he left it out. Now, there's a word for this kind of research: propaganda. Nevertheless, the medical world rallied around his theory. Keys ended up on the cover of Time magazine. 2 weeks later, the American Heart Association officially adopted the cholesterol theory of heart disease. Now let's take a look real quick at the deadly fatty acid in fat-free food. Up until recently, humans have consumed a roughly equal ratio of omega-3 fatty acids, vital for your heart's function, and omega-6s. This equal ratio is essential for preventing heart disease. All that changed in the 1950s with the introduction of omega-6 rich fat-free foods, especially vegetable oils, which are loaded with omega-6, the highest inflammatory food group. But when the cholesterol myth took hold, they were marketed as a heart-healthy substitute for butter and animal oils. Hold on just a second. Hello. You got him. What can I do for you? Yes, ma'am. Give me that number quickly. Nine six what? Thank you. Goodbye. All right. We're back. Sorry about that. Let's get back to this. In the 50s, with the introduction of omega-6 rich, fat-free foods, especially vegetable oils, which are loaded with omega-6s, the highest inflammatory food group. But when the cholesterol myth took hold, they were marketed as a heart-healthy substitute for butter and animal oils, a move that brought deadly results. Since the consumption of toxic oils like soybean and canola oil have skyrocketed 1,000-fold, now soybean oil makes up as much as 20% of the American diet, fueling chronic inflammatory as a direct consequence, dramatically increasing the rate of heart disease. And just so you know, folks, this is why I only eat real butter. The omega-6, omega-3 ratio of American diet is a 20-to-1. Since then, the rate of heart disease has skyrocketed. Health gurus were dead wrong when they blamed red meat, a vital source of omega-3s, for the heart disease epidemic. They never bothered to explain why native people who ate about 85% of their calories as wild red meat lacked modern heart disease. And crazy as it sounds, the traditional bacon, lard, eggs, and butter diet, the same big medicine told us, caused heart disease, is a rich source of omega-3s, which reduces inflammation and actually prevents heart disease. Pretty soon it became the accepted wisdom throughout the medical field. Lowering LDL, bad cholesterol, was now the primary focus of preventive medicine. The ironic part is Eisenhower was experiencing firsthand just how wrong this theory was, and paying for it with his health and life. Throughout the 60s, Eisenhower suffered 7 heart attacks and 14 myocardial infarctions, even though he stuck religiously to the heart-healthy diet. In 1969, the famous war hero and beloved president died from his last heart attack. In circles today, it's known as the Eisenhower paradox, and while this is only a single piece of evidence, the so-called Eisenhower paradox is killing millions of average Americans. The medical establishment is still force-feeding us the same myth that killed Eisenhower. Remember the conventional wisdom that LDL cholesterol causes arterial plaque buildup, obstructing our blood flow and leading to heart disease. You've heard it. I've heard it repeating, says the doctor that wrote this, from elementary to medical school. Like my colleagues, I believed it without question. That is, until I read thousands of studies proving otherwise. Yes, LDL cholesterol can be found in the plaque that builds up along damaged arteries, but this point misses a single fact, one that even a high school psychology course could tell you. The damage to your arteries happens before, not after, the plaque builds up. Plaque is your body's response to heart disease, not the cause of it. The LDL cholesterol catches the blame because it's found at the scene of a crime, but that's like blaming a scab for the injury which caused it to form, or blaming a band-aid for the injury it's covering. The truth is, the real culprit for heart disease has always been inflammation. And the worst part is, the inflammation in our blood vessels is caused by the low-fat diet recommended for years by modern medicine. That's why Eisenhower's heart disease grew worse even with his heart-healthy diet, which replaced so-called artery-clogging butter with toxic vegetable oils. That's why 950,000 Americans continue to die each year from heart disease, even as they consume record quantities of low-fat foods, vegetable oils, and cholesterol-lowering drugs. In fact, the truth about inflammation is old news, but the medical establishment still ignores it. even when the mainstream media gets it right. Here's Time magazine reveals the secret killer. In 2004, Time magazine cover identified inflammation as a secret killer. Secret killer. Take a look at the cover. The secret killer, a surprising link, inflammation in heart attacks, cancers, Alzheimer's, and other diseases. The Time article starts with a description of the conventional explanation of heart disease. Not long ago, most doctors thought of heart attacks as primarily a plumbing problem. Over the years, fatty deposits would build up inside the major coronary arteries, and they grew so big they cut off a supply bud to a vital part of the heart. A complex molecule called LDL, or so-called bad cholesterol, provided the raw material for these deposits. Clearly, anyone with high LDL levels was at a greater risk of developing heart disease. Then the writer quickly shuts it down. There's one problem with this explanation. Sometimes it's dead wrong. Indeed, half of heart attacks occur in people with normal cholesterol level. I wasn't shocked to hear this, but I was stunned to hear the blunt article actually reach the mainstream. Of course, this is more than 10 years ago, and in spite of attention generated by this article, the market for cholesterol-lowering drugs to counteract a heart attack has skyrocketed fivefold since then. In short, there's nothing stopping Big Pharma's relentless march for profits. No amount of evidence, no matter how airtight, even from a prestigious source like Time magazine. Their profit margins trump proof that certainly trumps your health and your life. But I have good news. You don't have to fall victim to the mass guinea pig experiments. I've identified the urgent indicators of heart disease you can check with a simple blood test. These tests indicate with startling accuracy that you could be in imminent risk of a heart attack or stroke. In fact, one of these indicators can predict that the risk may jump as much as 500%. According to, a review of 26 articles published in the Journal of Biotechnology Information provided a very tiny, proved that even a tiny increase in level, 5 mcg, confirms a 20% heart risk, a 20% increase in heart disease risk, independent of any other factors for heart disease. I can speak from personal experience as a physician. Take the incredible case of one of my patients, Edward N., 48 years old, who walked to my Center for Health and Wellness about 10 years ago. Ed had suffered 2 strokes, but what baffled medical experts is he showed none of the traditional risk factors. He worked as a roofer his whole life. He was physically active, muscular, cut, and ripped. In fact, he looked like a bodybuilder. He didn't drink or smoke. At 155 pounds, he was not overweight, and his cholesterol level was a normal 150 milligrams DL. Not your typical stroke victim, right? So when he came to my practice, doctors told him he had an 80% likelihood of a 3rd stroke. I tested Ed for one of these indicators, and his level showed 26, the highest I had ever seen. In one study, people who had a stroke but had no other risk factors, 90% had elevated levels of this indicator. Yet, incredibly, no one ever checked Ed's levels. Ed wasn't alone. Only a few of my patients ever had this indicator checked previously by their personal physicians. So, why this case? The story of one of my patients, 66-year-old woman, gives a clue. Like Ed, she suffered from strokes, but her factors were normal, so I checked her blood for this stroke and heart disease indicator. When she told her neurologist of my plan, he asked, why are they checking for that? Even if it is elevated, there's no drug to lower it. In the neurologist's view, no drug equals no solution. The simple truth, no drug is necessary. It's easy to lower these levels effectively and reliably with safe, inexpensive supplements available from your local grocery store. which is why doctors and specialists, beholden to Big Pharma, don't collect these simple tests. Many have never even heard of them. With Ed's case, I was able to lower his levels using a simple vitamin therapy, one you could apply at home, and he never suffered a stroke again, even when his doctors encouraged him to get his affair in order because of what they claimed was an 80% risk of another stroke. Today, Ed is in his 60s and enjoying an active, productive life. And the doctor does an ageless heart manual here, Dr. Al Sears. He says to take advantage of these therapies. You don't need to spend a lot of time and money. You don't need doctor visits, prescription, physical exams. You don't even need health insurance. But you do need one thing: the courage to stand up to people that tell you that drugs and surgery are the only way. They're willing to make, if you're willing to make that life-changing move, if you're motivated, taking back your control of your health and well-being, then my groundbreaking research is definitely for you. I urge you to act today. In just a moment, I'll show you how you can access your ageless heart manual, advanced strategies for reverse heart disease. And hopefully you can do this. I will include this whole article with this video. God bless you, and thank you for listening.
Yeah.